As we're very tight for time today because we've got a huge amount of content to go through, first of all, I'd like to say welcome everyone to what is our first webinar of 2021. So it's great to see so many people again logged in today. As always, really appreciate you taking the time out. What is an unbelievably busy schedule for everybody, and I hope you learn a lot from the content today. I'm Stephen Edwards. I'm the head of marketing for Closomat. Kate, if you could move on the slide, that'd be great. Thank you. And I'll be your host today. I don't really say a lot in these sessions. All I really do is sit in the background, put some of the slides together, and then at the end, just give an opportunity to do a Q&A. What I would say throughout this morning, for the next hour, do take advantage of the Q&A or chat at the bottom or top of your screens. And on hand, we've got Adam Ferry from the OT service and two people, Robin Tuffley and Danny, as well from Closomat on hand to answer any queries you've got. So don't feel you can't put a chat out there whilst people are presenting. Please do. Okay, so without further ado, we've got a couple of, before that, I'd like to introduce the main presenters for today, which is Jeff Clark, who's the product specialist for Closomat. I know some of you probably know Jeff already, and Kate Sheehan. I'm sure even more of you know Kate. Kate has presented a number of times with us, and I know we'll have spoken to a number of you over the years as well. So it's great to have both of these people on board today, and Kate will talk through the main bulk of the presentation later. So before we do that, I've just got a couple of polls. Those who have been on these before will know we can't have a Closomat presentation without a few polls. So just wanted to ask just a few questions, and these are, hopefully you can see these on the screen. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, sorry, that took a few seconds. So if you can't see, you might have to move the poll question, but I'm really interested to find out which colours, seems an odd question to ask, but which colours really resonate most with you. So you've got four options on the screen here, all the same imagery, but different coloured text and different colour backgrounds. So we're just really interested to find out which ones resonate most with you. And when you look and think, yeah, I really like that, that's something that stands out for me. Everybody's different, we know that, but I'm just, from our perspective, just find a little bit more about colours that we know and colours that we already use and see which ones resonate. Okay, the votes are staving in. That's great. I'll just give you a couple of minutes on this one. Now they are actually looking at this probably a little bit the wrong way around. So just follow the text on there. So red background, blue text, dark blue background, red, light, which is actually the one on the right, light blue background, yellow and green text, which is the third one, and then the green background, which is the second one. Okay, brilliant. Hopefully that all makes sense. Great, thanks for that. Okay, a clear winner actually, which is just for everybody on today, is the dark blue background, red and light blue text. So with more than half of you, with the second place being a red background with blue text. So much appreciated. Thank you for that. Okay. It's all a bit slow today. It won't be long. Okay. So second poll. Now, I don't know how many of you will know much about Hygiene Rooms, but as it's a paediatric focused webinar today, I thought it was good to ask the question, how many of you do know, have heard of Hygiene Rooms? And we'll cover this a little bit in the Closomat section later, but again, a simple yes or no to this one. Okay, some really good percentage votes in here. Thanks for that. I think there's a pretty even split between yeses, slightly less yeses than nos. So hopefully you'll find the bit of the information we give you later on very relevant to this. Thank you for that. Okay, number 3. So for those that said yes, which is roughly a third of you, if you're able to sort of answer this one, if you answered yes to the previous poll, what stage, if any, do you get involved in? So is it in that initial specification of the hygiene room, taking a client, or in this case, it would be the child to one of the rooms? Do you show them how it works, the whole process? Do you pass on client interest to a specifier who perhaps is doing that particular work for you? Or perhaps there's somebody in the school that's in charge, for want of a better word, of all things when it comes to disabled equipment and such like. Okay, obviously there'll be less of you voting for this, but it's pretty much a third on there, so give that. Okay, there's still a few of you voting, which is great, thank you. Okay, and more than half you say not really involved, so that again tallies with what you said previously. Just a couple more now. When selecting a wash-dry toilet for your clients, which brand or type do you most often specify for? Is it the Palma Vita? Is it the competitor brand? Is it a BioBide? Other brands, or you don't specify for wash-dry toilets, only standard toilets? Well, I'm glad to hear the highest percentage is number 1, but and a number of you actually don't specify for wash-dry toilets, so pretty much here to hear Kate's content today, which makes a huge amount of sense. Okay, I'll just wait a second. We're up to 75% people voting. Okay, that's great. Thank you for that one. And last but one. So are you expecting to have more assessments in March now many of your clients have had the COVID vaccine? Would that be significantly more, a little more, no more than before the vaccine rollout, or perhaps less than the vaccine rollout? Okay. Brilliant, thank you for that. I think the majority are either no more or a little more. So that's definitely encouraging to hear. Thank you for that one. And then the final one from me, and then I'll hand over to Kate, will be, as hope to come out of the current lockdown, do you think you will continue to conduct both remote assessments and online assessments where appropriate, or go back to doing all assessments on site? So your choices are: continue to do both remote and on-site, continue to do both but remote will be less, revert back to on-site assessments only, or you only do on-sites now, so there'll be no change. Okay, I'll just wait a couple of seconds. People are still putting in their answers, which is brilliant. Thank you. What's interesting on this one is 42% of you saying you will continue to do both remote and on site. So I think things are probably going to change for the longer term, post-COVID as well, in terms of ways of working. And not many of you saying you revert back to on-site assessment only 13%. So thank you for that. It's really, really useful. So that ends the polling. So I appreciate your time on those. And what I'd like to do now is hand over to Kate for the main bulk of today's webinar. Thank you, Kate.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to this session. As Stephen has said, my name's Kate Shune, and I am an occupational therapist and a director of the OT service. I've got an awful lot to cover, and I'm very anxious about time, and I know Stephen will want me to finish in time for the guys to do their bit on Closomat. So I'm not going to go through the learning outcomes, but I do want to make 3 points. I'm going to use parents as a generic name for guardian, caregiver, foster parent, whatever it is. I'm just going to use parent. I just want to say the pictures in this presentation are all of my niece, and I've had permission to use her pictures. And I'm going to use toileting, as you can probably expect, for kind of talking through developmental stages for children. When I first started to do this, I realised I could probably actually talk for a whole day on this, so I had to pull it down into toileting. So let's start. You know, a new child is an absolute joy and delight, but as a parent, we'll know it comes with significant responsibilities and anxieties. But when that child has additional needs, the anxieties increase and have a significant effect on all those around the child. And we need to know about these impacts and how that affects a family. And while doing some research for this session, I found some really good insights into the impacts for those parents. And it said 34% are more likely to experience low quality of relationships compared to the national average of 26%. 39% are more likely to have money worries, and we know this is true because what happens is people don't return to work, so a 2-income family often will go down to 1 income, or a single parent will actually have to revert to being on some form of benefits because they want to stay at home and look after their child. But this one is really significant for me, which is more likely to have no close friends, and 1 in 6 said they had no close friends at all. And I think that relates to the anxieties about your child, but also things take an awful lot longer to do with your child. And there's also that anxiety about going back to, say, a parent and toddler group or your NCT group, and your child is different, and everybody's talking about developmental milestones and your child's not achieving those, and the impact of that on you as a person. And from a professional point of view, from my point of view, working with a child, because of all these things that a parent feels or experiences, we really do need a multi-professional intervention for children, regardless of their abilities. But if they have additional needs, we need this whole team. And the sooner we can get that team on board, the better. I often hear comments about, oh, we don't see a child until they're 2, or we don't see a child until they're 5. But actually, between the ages of 0 and 2 or 0 and 5, a huge amount of development is going ahead. And we know if we don't catch children early enough, we can impact their outcomes and their achievements. And that's for children with additional needs, and also our normal children. We know that things like Sure Start projects really do work. So we need to try and get everybody involved. And personally, for me, I like to often work with a psychologist when we're working with this, and I know they're like gold dust, but I really do try and push for a psychologist to be involved with kind of activities of daily living where there are issues around anxieties from mum or other caregivers. So let's look at the OT view. So why do we need this knowledgeable team, and why do we need OT? Well, we need to enable to maximise the child's independence through adapting the task or modifying the environment, and support the parents to gain as much independence as possible at the right time for that individual child. And I want to stress here, you know, when you're looking at a task, say toileting, the maximising independence isn't achieving the whole process. you might only achieve a small amount. But actually what you need to do is keep your goals realistic. You can change your goals as a child develops or gains more skills, but don't see the end goal as somebody being independently be able to go to the toilet, because actually that might not be the case. So, to be able to understand the environmental needs of your clients, we need to have a knowledge of what is normal, as in regards to developmental milestones, and how your client's environment can enable but often reduce development. So an example I always use when people say, oh, you don't need to get involved yet, is if a child cannot access their toilet, they can't see the beginnings of developing those skills. Because if you have, when a child is learning to go to the toilet, they do it by mimicking and kind of imitating their parents. But if they can't actually get to the toilet and see what happens in that room on a regular basis, you are reducing their development. But on top of that, if you can imagine the effort required and the time required to get to a toilet is greater than what is reasonable to do within a day, again, you are limiting a child's ability to learn and develop the skills to use the toilet. Okay, so let's go on to these averages. I hate the word average. What does it mean? We're all different, but average is basically that mathematical curve and what people meet in the middle. So I'm going to whiz through this. I'm hoping that you all have a reasonable understanding of this, but about a month, we have about 4 bowel movements a day, usually associated with waking up. At 2 months, hopefully that's gone down to about 2 bowel movements a day, usually after being fed. And it's what my health visitor used to call me the classic feed and rumble. So you'd be feeding your baby and then you'd have a bowel movement. At 4 months, there's some delay between feeding and elimination. And at 7 months, you will find that your child or a child stays dry for 1 to 2 hours. So we jump a bit, but at 12 to 18 months, the child may wake at night and cry to be changed. And that's often because of smells, or the fact that they feel uncomfortable because they've had a poo. And then also at 12 to 18 months, they may indicate during the day that they have done a wee or a poo. And the classic one that often a lot of us will have experienced, that the child will go into a corner, do a poo, squat, do a poo, and then come and tell you that they need to be changed. So we know at that point that they're beginning to have an understanding of their bodily functions. Again, I have to stress this is averages, so we just need to take that on board with the children that we're working with. And there's difference with different genders as well. Often boys are a little bit slower with toilet training than girls. So by 2 to 2.5, a child shows interest in toileting and potty training, and will often follow parents to the toilet and mimic what they're doing. Between 2.5 and 3, a child will achieve regulated toileting with occasional daytime accidents and will tell somebody when they need the toilet if one is not accessible. And that one is the classic, I need the toilet. When do you need it, darling? Now! And you have to find a toilet. So those things are happening. And then at 3 years, they should be washing their hands independently, and between 3 and 4 years, independent toileting, including getting on and off, may need some assistance with cleaning after a bowel movement, but that's usually if it is not your standard formed poo, but one that's a bit explosive, and they need a bit of help with that. And then 4 to 5 years, completely independent, including self and clothes management during the day. However, that's all during the day. At night, it's a little bit slower. And at night, we would be expecting around the ages of 5 to 6 to be dry at night. Boys particularly, and deep sleepers, can take longer to be dry at night, and it's only deemed a problem within the NHS at around the age of 7, and then they'll intervene with some help at that point. And it's quite interesting, isn't it? That's the kind of general milestones that you would expect from a developmental stages of toileting. And you know, as parents, we've already modified the task, don't we? And there's lots of products out there that you can use to modify the task. And I have to say, I have used all of these with children I have worked with throughout the years. So that don't always think of specialist equipment when you're looking at modifying the task. Look at what's on the mainstream, because some of it really is quite good. And then I just had to bring this in. This was a new piece or new potty launched in America in 2017 and caused a huge amount of furore about it. I have to say, I'm not overly impressed because what happens when you want to transition onto using a standard toilet? I don't know about you, but most standard toilets I know don't come with an attached iPad. I also think let's concentrate on the task in hand, which is bodily functions of weeing and pooing, and not entertain our kids while we're doing it, because it's very much a functional skill. So being an OT, I'm always coming back to the OT process, and we need to look at our clients with additional needs around the person, the task and the environment. And we need to get all three to enable us to produce the maximum performance we can for our individual child. So with the person, we need to understand developmental skills to allow the toilet training to happen. So I've talked to you about the time stages, but I also want to talk to you about the developmental skills as well. The task, again, we need to look at the activity analysis of the task, and the environment. We need to review the space that will be required to complete the task successfully. And then once we've got all those three together, we should be able to produce a good outcome or goal for our client. So we can break the task down and work with the parents to achieve that independence. And then an activity analysis will give you a clear idea of how a child uses the toilet. Often in this case, it's not always possible. I will talk to parents about siblings and what's happened with siblings, or how they learn to use the toilet. And I think we need to actually be quite observational. So we need to look at how other members do it. I'm often sat in a bathroom with a mum, with her sat on the toilet, me sat on the side of the bath, discussing how they would like to achieve the task. But there are other things that we need to do as well, which is understand the cultural needs of a client, because some clients will want to do things slightly differently to say, another client, and we just have to be acutely aware of individual needs, and that all comes through observation, conversation, building up that rapport, willing to talk about a subject which can be quite personal. You know, going to the toilet is quite a personal thing, but it's building up that rapport so you can do it, and it's not always achievable in a one visit assessment. Oh, there we go. So access to the toilet to the right products in the room and at the right time is really key to long-term success. And if you don't have access to a bathroom, it makes it really difficult to learn how to use that space for a child. And not only that, it's really critical that they learn to use that space from very early on. And often we've gone in to look at, say, bathing at an early stage, but we need to look at bathing or showering and toileting at the same time. Because if you think it takes you a long time to get to that space, or you can't use that space then becomes a frustrating room to be in. And what we don't want is a child to become not used to the usual functions of a bathroom. And then I'm going to do a plea here, and I often do this, and I've actually put on here apologise for doing this, but I'm not actually going to apologise. I work with children and I work with adults, but the one thing I do know quite clearly is that my little niece, who is now 5, is going to become like her mum. And I know she is going to be probably 5'6", 5'7", slim build, lucky thing, and is going to need a different space to what space she needs at 5. So if we're designing the environment and we know the cost of adaptations, we need to future-proof a long-term need. Now, I know that people move and I know that people relocate, but actually a lot of people with children with additional needs tend to stay put. What I have found is occasionally a family with additional needs will move to a school area that they want to get into. So, you know, I used to live in Berkshire and everybody wanted to go to Trelaws, and a lot of families who had the financial resources would move to that area. But generally speaking, people tend to stay put because they have the community support there, they feel comfortable there. The thought of moving is just too overwhelming. So we have to design for the child, but bear in mind the potential adult needs. And I think it's also really important to say, well, what age does a child become an adult? Well, you know, legally it's 18, but actually you will have children who are 14 who've probably got to the same height as they will be when they are an adult. So it's still very much a need to address as a child. I've got a lovely example at the moment of a young lad who is actually 9, but he's 5'8" already. And when we were designing his bathroom, what we were taking into account that his mum was 6'1" and his dad is 6'6", and a farmer and huge. So we had to accommodate the fact that we were probably going to have a 6 foot at least child with a space that's needed with the 2 carers that are supporting him. So please design for the child that's going to become an adult. So we can look at the person, we can look at the occupation, but I need to stress we need to look at the environment at the same time. You know, you can teach a child to use a potty, but if they can't get on the toilet, how can you progress? So we need to maximise that independence as much as possible, as early as possible. So I just wanted to go on to developmental milestones, because I think it's really important that we understand norm, but we also understand the milestones that you need to be able to achieve toilet training. So you need the physiological development, you need the bladder and bowel control, you need cognitive and verbal development, you need emotional and social awareness, and you need motor skills. I'm going to concentrate mainly on motor skills, but I do want to look at the others as well. So with psychological, we're looking at the child's awareness of needing to go to the toilet, demonstrating that squatting, the grunting, the going red in the face and the hiding that you get, and showing kind of no bowel movements through the night, dry nappy for long periods, urinating at one time versus a little often through the day, and some regularity of bowel movements. And I actually added on here, unless your client is achieving the above, we need to question, is it the right time to toilet train? However, I do want to add a little caveat there. There have been times where we would say physiologically the child hasn't developed these skills, but what we do notice is the body eliminates at certain times. So that child may well still be using nappies or pads, but actually what we're finding is that that child tends to eliminate at 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night. And as a therapist, if that's happening, I will still look at, can we do that elimination on a toilet? And can we provide that space to do that? And that's for a number of reasons. It's about normality, that's where you go to the toilet, and can we build up better skills on bowel movement and bladder management. But it's also sometimes far nicer for parents than having to change nappies that are dirty, when we can manage that kind of bowel movement on a toilet. And even more sometimes, you know, if you want a level of dignity as that child becomes into a teenager and maybe has some awareness, that you can actually leave them to open their bowels on the toilet, and then if we can use equipment for them to wash and dry themselves, that gives huge amount of dignity. So that's a physiological, but again, it's this, how do you learn? And I've said this before, learning comes through play and observation of what adults and siblings do. And if you cannot access the toilet, how do you learn? And I think for me, again, it's one of those things where, as a therapist, as an OT, as a housing OT, which I would deem my speciality, but it's really important, how are we getting this child to see the toilet, and how quickly can we do that? So the cognitive and verbal development needed for toileting is, does your client have the vocabulary or ability to non-verbally communicate the ability to toilet train? For example, can they say pee or poo or potty? Can they use Makaton, you know, toilet? Can they point to signs or symbols? To be able to say that they're able to start the toileting process. Has your client got the ability to imitate the modelling behaviour? And sometimes that can be through play, with teddies going to the toilet, or having a potty in the room in the corner to show that they're understanding that cognitive and verbal development, that this is where they need to go. And there's lots of things out there that can help you do that. You know, I've often used signs and symptoms to support toileting, even the process, as in the teach play one here, about how you can teach toileting, so a child is learning to do the tasks or the sequence of tasks in the right way. But often I'll use the kind of cards, which is, we might start with just a toilet and then somebody sat on the toilet, so we're showing children what they need to do as part of the task analysis and task breakdown for going to the toilet. And then they need the emotional and social awareness. You know, does your client want to achieve using the toilet? You know, I can do it, that kind of desire for parental approval. I think, again, you just need to watch here. I had a client who was still having their nappies changed on a changing table and showed no interest at all in using the toilet. And he's 4.5 now. And when I first met him, he was about 2, and I showed no interest in the toilet. And at 4, he was showing no interest in the toilet. We were getting to a problem in the fact that the changing table that the mum had bought, the metal legs were beginning to crack, and we were having to potentially look for a changing table. And we just said, the psychologist was involved and said, well, why don't we just take it away and say it's broken? And in fact, Dad actually broke it and left it in the bathroom, showing it was broken. And this child just went and used the toilet. And as therapists, we were all kind of having a bit of a giggle to ourselves. And when we thought about it, this child really loved spending that time with mum. Large family, so every time he needed his nappy changed, he had one-on-one with mum, and he loved it. So what we had to do was provide one-on-one time with mum, so he still felt that he got that attention. So again, coming back to, is your client able to imitate others, and do they know actually what a potty or toilet is for? And then I think there are two other issues. Does your client have challenging behaviour that impacts training? And does your client have sensory needs that may impact toilet training as well? And we did a session for Closomat on designing for children with sensory needs. So it's there, you'll be able to access that as well on the YouTube channel if you want to look at that. But I want to concentrate on motor skills. Can your client make their way to the toilet? Can they sit independently? Has your child developed the ability to undress themselves or dress themselves? Can they pull up their pants and trousers? And can your client flush the toilet? So let's look at those in turn. For me, can your client make their way to the toilet? This is really critical and very much an environmental issue. If you can't get to the toilet in a timely fashion, it will reduce your client's confidence in getting to that toilet. And if they have regular accidents on the way to the toilet, have we got the toilet in the right space? So to give you an example, we will often go, oh, well, we'll put in a stair lift or a through-floor lift to get a child up to the bathroom upstairs. But I don't know about you, but the actual time it takes to get a child, say, into the lift, up the stairs, into the bathroom, onto the toilet, actually is quite a long time. These lifts don't go fast, and we might actually be impeding toilet training. And actually, we maybe need to look at ground floor facilities, not for all children, but we do need to consider it. If a child has the problem of, she knows she needs to go to the toilet, she knows she needs to go quickly, but she's not getting that it's kind of developmental experience quickly enough to be able then to go up the stairs or go in a lift to actually get to the toilet. So at that stage, we may be going, do we need to have some sort of space downstairs for a toilet? Because we don't want to teach failure to our children. If we think we can get toileting, and the dignity and the pride of being able to use your own toilet is fundamental to a child. And yes, we can look at having potties in the corner for short-term use, but not long-term use. I don't think that's appropriate. It's not normal for a child to use a potty in a lounge, or even a young teenager to have to use some sort of toilet or commode downstairs. We need to look at the environment. So, but we also need to understand, can our clients sit independently? Do they need to be sitting independently, or can we use equipment? And there again, there's a raft of equipment that's available that can be freestanding to start with, and then we've got equipment that you can use to get good positioning on the toilet. The second one in here is actually a mainstream product, but I have used it for some children with cerebral palsy who have the ability to climb but just need to hold on while they're eliminating, and that works quite well. And all you paediatric therapists out there will know that you need to keep your feet as flat on the floor or on a foot plate if you possibly can, because that helps elimination. But again, we need to look at bathrooms, don't we? And when you're using equipment, it has an impact on your bathroom as well. Europe-wide, we have the smallest bathrooms out there. The average UK bathroom, according to the British Bathroom Manufacturers Association, is 250 by 2,500 by 2,500, which does make adaptations challenging at times. But I think sometimes we need to think about how can we enlarge that space to make it workable for the client, because the tasks that we're doing in a bathroom not only are intimate, but also require a significant number of people at times to be able to support that client in that space. So not only do we need to think about the space for the equipment, but we need to speak about space for the carer or the parents, and we need to make sure that that environment works for that particular person. But again, equipment takes up a lot of space, doesn't it? And sometimes what happens when we're designing is we don't take into account the equipment that we need. So, you know, a piece of equipment like this is great over the toilet for the client that we're using for, but if you've got other siblings in the house or other people who need to use the toilet, where are you going to store this piece of kit while it's not being used? And often they're stored in shower areas, but if you haven't got a shower and you've got a bath, you know, where are you going to put this piece of kit? And it's just, again, when you're looking at the environment, you need to take into account the storage of equipment. But also a piece of kit like this, as I said before, the turnover circle on this sort of equipment is between 12 to 1500, depending on the size of your child. And I can assure you, you need a reasonable sized bathroom to accommodate that. So the environment to me is key for that motor skills, to be able to use it. But again, we can use different products to support different actions, and often, I don't know whether you're members of the DFG Champions Facebook, but absolutely brilliant resource, and you'll often get questions and queries from OTs and technical officers about how we can use different equipment to support toileting or access to a toilet. And what the middle one for me is one I use quite a lot with children. This is just a Armitage Sanks junior toilet, and you can get toilets in different heights, not always perfect if you start to get a bigger bottom, but can be used for children. And in some cases I have put a standard toilet and a junior toilet next to each other if I've got the space, which allows really good access to the toilet for a child. Great for children who are using K-walkers, because you can get round it and you can sit on it really easily. But sometimes, you know, with the environment, it might actually just be the use of really good grab rails in the right position that will enable access and use of that toilet. So again, I don't want to go much into this, but, you know, has your child developed or client developed the ability to undress and dress themselves? Often we're talking, and certainly from a housing perspective, around the environment and how we can change the environment. But actually some of the more simple things that needs to be taught by my treating paediatric colleagues is that how do you get your trousers up and down? How do you get your pants up and down? And it's showing a client through, you know, who cognitively can't verbally communicate it through images. But actually, if a child cannot do that independently, it's going to be very difficult for them to long-term be able to do independently use the toilet. So to give you an example, I had a little lad who has cerebral palsy, and he just turned 11, and he really wanted to be able to stand and pee, which is quite normal, but he needed to be able to undo his trousers while holding on, and we actually had to adapt his trousers, and we used the kind of braces technique. So he could unhook one brace, which allowed his trousers to drop slightly, which enabled him to then unzip while holding on to one grab rail. Now the grab rails were in a really strange position because they were quite high up for him, because he needed that ability to, as he called it, swing, to be able to take his flies down. But then he could go to the toilet, and what we found was we replicated what he had at home, at school, which enabled him to use the toilet at school as well. And then the final one for me is, can your client flush the toilet, and is this essential? You know what, I think it's fundamentally essential that we can flush our own wee and poo away. It is part of the occupation, part of that task. And if you can only do part of it, we haven't achieved independence. And there are so many options now for this. You know, you can have remote switches, you can have foot switches, you can have infrared switches, you can have a lever, you can have push button, you can have remote. So there is no reason why we can't work with our clients to allow them to be able to flush their own waste away. So yes, look at the options around the environmental impact, and usually you can find something that will work for your individual child. Now, I'm conscious that I've only got a couple of minutes, but I just want to talk to you about a case study, which I am just going to go through. I've got two case studies. This little lad, Ali, was initially assessed at 3 and lived with mum and dad and 3 siblings in a housing association property with a bathroom upstairs. He had the physiological development, the cognitive development, the emotional development. He lacked the motor skills to be able to achieve the task. And when I was first involved, we literally put in steps like this and a toilet like this, all mainstream products, cost under £100, and mum wiped his bottom, and that was their preference. He's now 7 and he didn't want mum to clean his bottom anymore, but he didn't have that reach to do it. He's also struggling at school, and he was beginning to get teased for having to have a teaching assistant go in with him. And we would have expected at 7 that he would be independent, and therefore we really needed to address this. So we had a Closomat installed via DFG, but he still used his little stools to get in. And we were very fortunate that the school agreed to fund through PTA funding a toilet, and we found the hand basins were low enough to allow him to be independent. So again, with toileting, we don't just need to look at the home, we need to look outside the home and how we can engage with those activities. When they were travelling, this family just used to take folding steps to help him to get on the toilets, and that generally worked all right. And they were keen users of changing places around the country, and great advocates of those services. But finally, I just want to talk to you about Demi. She was initially assessed at 5 and mum preferred to keep her in nappies. The wider team involved with this client was trying to work with mum on age appropriate development, and unfortunately Demi was moved in with a foster parent because of various issues, and she was now living with her foster mum and dad and 2 other children with complex needs. She had access to a large shower room with toilet downstairs, but she had a tiny ensuite to her own little ground floor bedroom. On initial assessment, Demi was not using the toilet at home, but did at school. So we did a quick visit to school to find out what was happening. And she was basically using a junior toilet in a cubicle with lots of grab rails. So she could take a K-walker up and she could get into the toilet, and she was able to, she tended to wear dresses and she could pull down her pants. She sometimes needed a bit of help to readjust her pants after she'd finished, but generally she was doing really well. So we decided just to replicate this at home. We're going to put in a junior toilet. This is due to go on site shortly. But what we did do was, the aim long term was that she would clean herself using a bidet or wash dry toilet. So part of the specification is we were installing a fuse box to enable a wash dry toilet to be installed at a later date. But I've just got a little plea here for my last thing. Is Demi wanted pink grab rails, and we've found some in China, but if anybody knows any UK supplier of pink grab rails, please let me know. And just to let you know that her foster mum drew the line at a pink toilet, thankfully, because we couldn't find a junior one. And that's me today. I know it was a whistle-stop tour, but I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will hand you over to Jeff.
Right, there we go. Oops. There we go. So, thanks for that, Kate. Thanks for that, Kate. And yeah, just a quick introduction about myself. My name's Jeff Clark. I'm a product specialist at Closomat, and some of you may know me. For those of you who don't, I've worked with Closomat for about 4.5 years now, and I cover the sort of North London and sort of home counties north area, from Oxfordshire across to Essex. So if you cover any of those areas, then you may see me around or have contact with me. I'm just going to take you through a few things about Closomat and what we can do in the sort of paediatric space, and then a few other things as well. So, looking at, obviously linking into back with what Kate has talked about today, what we do at Closomat is ideally helping people and children deal with their infant needs, and mainly looking at how we can work with clients and occupational therapists in reaching their objectives in terms of their toileting, and that involves, like Kate's been talking about, both the occupation of doing the toileting itself, but how people interact with that space, making sure there's enough room in the toileting area, how transfers are going to be taking place, and any other kind of support that they need. And as a first point of contact, us as product specialists will help you with that, and help you work around what the solutions are going to be for your current objective in terms of their toileting. We work with a lot of other suppliers as well, which I'll talk about as well. So there's lots of other things that we can look at. So obviously at Closomat, the main thing we do is the wash dry toilets. So that is one thing that we can certainly help you with. But we also work with our other trusted suppliers like Presslit and Lyco Hill-Rom in terms of providing other equipment for the toileting and bathroom space, to do with what Kate's been talking about, really. And as well as obviously working in domestic properties, we can help in schools with hygiene rooms as well. Obviously, I believe there's been stuff in the chat about hygiene rooms. And what a hygiene room is basically is a space where people can have more access to their toileting. So whether it be including a hoist or a changing bench, or even a height adjustable wash hand basin in a school usually. And that goes along with changing places toilets as well, where they're in public spaces with all those facilities as well. So if you do have large projects in terms of the home environment that they need other equipment, but also linking back in with the clients that go to school as well, then we can help with that advice or even project management to put those extra pieces of equipment in, or just give advice about what may be needed and what can be a solution. We also talked about as the child grows and gets older, so as their needs change in terms of accessing the toileting, and whether that might be at home, school, or even going on to university. We have included installed Closomats into university accommodation, or even working with universities to put in things like hygiene rooms or changing places facilities, so they can use toileting facilities around campus as well. So as a first point of call, just get in touch with us and we can have that discussion around your clients and their environment. So a quick story about the Palm Vita toilet. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it today, but it is the main wash dry toilet in the UK, based in the UK as a company, and we actually manufacture in the UK as well, which can obviously be quite relevant in these times of Brexit and the like. It's a very adaptable and versatile toilet, talking about how the toilet can grow as the child grows as well. So as needs change, it can be adjusted, and different equipment can be used with it. Very easy to use, which I'll come on to as well. And also, we can offer what we call a Palmolive 10-year servicing and warranty package, which I'll come on to as well. So obviously, especially if you're starting with a child that the going to be there for a long time. You might need a peace of mind for that toilet's going to be working for a long period of time. So we can offer that as well. I mean, I think the youngest child I've worked with in terms of putting a Closomat in has been 5 years old. So, you know, if they're going to be using a Closomat at 5, the chances they're going to be using it at 15, 25, 35. So, making sure we can support that child for as long as possible into adulthood. So some of the paediatric solutions that we can offer, we've mentioned how easy the Closomat is to use. There's various options that we have to make it very user-friendly for each individual child. I'd say you can adapt it to each individual person. So whether it's a physical disability or a challenge or a mental challenge or a learning disability or learning difficulty, there are different things that we can do for the toilet and different solutions we can offer to hopefully meet some of their needs. As an example, children that might have some difficulties with autism or attention deficit disorders, one thing we found is that obviously the Closomat is and the controls are very robust. So in some cases, for instance, a remote control might not be the best for a child if they have communication issues or anger issues and they end up throwing things around, or that can be very difficult. So using things like the touch sensitive switch, which I'll come on to, or just being able to use the elbow pads can be something that can be very useful for them and give them that independence back without getting frustrated and having to throw things around. And obviously the point is to get to a point where they can use their independence to become hygienically clean. So support systems, this is an example of the Riften hygiene toileting system. A couple of different methods of using it with the Closomat toilet, either with this rollover chassis or the seat which can be clipped directly on. Obviously what Kate talked about earlier about how the equipment can impact the family space. So is there space for a rollover to be stored, or would it be easier just for the seat to be clipped on and off the toilet as and when? These are all things that we can be discussed in the sort of the assessment part of the process, and all the time we're looking at what possible solutions are going to be with the clients and the families and so on. Again, other options, whether the child or young adult needs support on the toilet, whether it be having integrated arms to help them support themselves on the toilet, or even helping their transfers. We also have lateral body supports, especially for smaller children that can sit on the toilet. That can be an option as well. But also, we talked about hoisting with their transfers and support on the toilet. So one of the things we can look at is, do they have hoisting systems, or is that something that's going to be installed as part of the project? Looking at hoisting in general in terms of full room coverage rather than a straight track, or transferring from shower chairs and so on, and talking about all those situations that the clients may have to go through with their family or carers. And finally, the other controls that we've got are we have infrared proximity controls, which some children find very good to use, and also we have the touch sensitive switch. A lot of the time can be used with their feet or with limbs where they don't have good dexterity. Very simple to use, very robust, like I was talking about earlier, and it's attached to the toilet, so it's not something that you can lose or be thrown around. It's a very light piece of rubber, so even if it was thrown, it's not going to break or break anything else. So makes it very good in those sort of respects. Other thing is, with the Closomat, it can be changed in terms of things like the washing pressure, water pressure, and position of the spray, and those things are set by an engineer. So there's no option for clients to change things inadvertently when they're pressing buttons or anything like that. If they get distracted easily, we can make sure that occupation in terms of going to the toilet is as simple as possible. They go to the toilet, they can get themselves clean simply and easily without having to worry about anything else, and that they can focus on that task. but as I mentioned earlier, those sort of things can be changed going through life. So as Closomat as a company, we provide a lot of different resources. Obviously, the main resource is us as product specialists in terms of that first point of call and that experience that we can offer in terms of discussions and talking things through. A lot of the time, both with you and or the client, we can just be used almost as a sounding board to bounce ideas off and trying to get the right solutions. But we offer other things on our website, including white papers which have been put together with help from occupational therapists, and also the technical specifications of things where we're working with, especially if it's a larger project, especially where we're working with constructors or architects or surveyors to make sure there's enough space around, like Kate talks about turning circles of chairs and so on. So there's lots of different resource users as a resource to get as much information as you can to make sure we get the right solution. Now, we talked about product specialists as a resource. One of the things we can do help with your client assessments. Obviously, in these times, a lot of it's been done remotely, but we can still do on-site remote assessments as well. And working with you regarding product specifications or different products. Demonstrations a bit more tricky at the moment, but we certainly have online demonstrations and videos available. And again, working with not just the equipment, but the environment space as well for the building, making sure that the plumbing, for example, is in the right place or needs to be moved, or the space around for different equipment. Now, we talk about the no quibble guarantee is there as well. So if you use us for an assessment and we've done a product specification and you follow that product specification, then in terms of the Closomat piece of equipment, we can change that if things aren't quite right. Getting specifications, it's a bit of an art, and it can sometimes be we don't always get it right first time, but if we don't, we can change it at a later date. So how do we carry out these surveys? So as we talked about, looking at what we can do remotely in the first instance, but if we do need to go to site, we've got our risk assessments in place. So we follow those and obviously look at social distancing. But in terms of remote assessments, we have different ways of doing that, whether it's mainly through the phone or video call. So we use lots of different platforms, whether it be WhatsApp, Zoom, Teams, even Skype, or FaceTime, and we can work with you on those. It can be with the client, with yourselves, or as a joint call. So even like you would do normally, but you tend to get the best solutions when everybody's involved. So we can have multiple video calls or multiple user video calls. I think the most I've had on one video WhatsApp call has been 5 people. It was myself, the occupational therapist involved, the interpreter, the mum and the dad, who had better English than the mum, and he was away off-site near work. So we had a 5-way WhatsApp video call to get what we needed to do. So a quick just chart of our assessment process. These stages can be linked or merged, so we try and make it so it's as easy as possible for you and the client in terms of those discussions and those calls. But at the end of the day, it's looking at getting the information so we can provide a quotation for you in the easiest possible way. It might be that someone just needs to take a few photographs if we're not able to go out, but then hopefully we'll be able to go out to get that assessment for you. And just coming to the end now, we're just talking about what other things we can do in these times. We can do things virtually, like I mentioned. So not just assessments, but obviously team meetings. So if you do have any needs in terms of learning about Closomats or the other pieces of equipment, we can have a quick video call or put a meeting together. Use it as a resource, like I say. So we can put things together to cover what you want. We can do it bespoke to, if you've got any things that you want to cover off and get more information on, then just come to us and we can put something together for you. Now, finally, I'm just going to go through our servicing and maintenance. sort of packages we have. Mentioned before about Palmer Life. It's our 10-year servicing and warranty package. So our normal Closomat comes with 1 year built-in warranty cover, and then but most Closomats through a disabled facilities grant will be covered by 5 years servicing and warranty package, which a lot of councils will purchase. But we offer a 10-year plan as well. So especially for paediatric cases where there's the client's going to be using a Closomat for a long period of time, we can offer that that 10-year plan. And what's the difference between servicing and warranty? So a warranty will often only cover the manufacturing defects, and it's like the difference between when you're servicing your car. You still have a warranty, but you still go and service your car every year or every 20,000 miles, whatever it might be. So the servicing package covers an annual service from one of our specialised engineers. They can discuss with the clients any changes and any needs that have changed over time as well, and then can report back to you. It also includes wear and tear on the unit. So obviously a lot of them are in shower rooms where there's a lot of corrosion possibilities. So the wear and tear of the plumbing can take place, and the engineers will look after that. Obviously we come to you. It's not like when you have a sewing machine where you can pack it up and send it off for servicing. So what it does with that service contract is it protects the investment. You know, we've talked about 10 years plan, and protects the grant funding, and it can be done as part of a disabled facilities grant. We take all the responsibility away from the client and away from the local council as well. So we will go every year to service the toilet, and there's any issues that come over that time as well. If the client has any issues, it's a quick phone call to us, and we come straight out within a couple of days usually. So that safety check as well, what the engineers do, make sure that everything's working properly, and you have that peace of mind for that length of time that the clients are being looked after. Okay, so I'll hand you back over to Stephen now. He's just going to finish up.
That's great. Thanks, Jeff. And Jeff, if you can move the slides on as well, that would be brilliant. Thank you. So really just a quick summary for everyone. I think it's been a really interesting hour or so, and I know we've run over time a bit, I think, but it was really important that we covered, that Kate was able to cover off what she did, and she did it really, really well, but ultimately quite quickly as well. So hopefully you're able to see what you wanted to see and hear and learn. And it was considering the impact of the physical environments on developmental milestones, reflecting on the importance of toilet access within child development, and developing an understanding of the challenges and solutions within our client groups. And then Jeff went through some very specific examples of how Closomat can really help you and your clients, hopefully really just enable them to have a little bit better life. And do contact Jeff, who will take all of your calls and queries. No, but he will. He's certainly able to take those calls as and when he needs to, and he'll pass them on to the relevant people if indeed it's not his area. So just the next slide, Jeff, if you could. Yeah, great. So yeah, if you did want to find out any more and you didn't email Jeff, then do email our generic email addresses of info@closomat.co.uk, and that we will ensure that that is passed on to the right people. Live chat, I'm not sure how many of you know that we have live chat on the website. It's a great resource where you can ask any questions, any queries you've got about product, any client needs, etc. There are experts at the end of that line that can help you, but also there's the website with a wealth of resources. Okay, so going to open it up to questions. I think before questions, just to reiterate to everyone that's still on, because I appreciate we are 10 minutes over time. The certificate and also the content you see today will be sent out to you hopefully by the end of this week. If not by the end of this week, then certainly by Monday next week. So you'll have the CPD certificate and content with you, just in case I forget to tell you after the questions. So I'd like to really open it out now and perhaps ask people that we've got to be managing the chat all morning. So we've got Adam, Danny and Robin. Adam, are there any specific questions that you picked up perhaps you want to share?
I mean, I think we've tried to get through as many questions as we possibly can, and I'm sure there's some that we'll not get to, and I apologise if we don't. Kate, there was one specific question. It was a really good one from Jill, and I think you went on to answer a bit of it later on, but I think it's worth posing. She was saying, given how long it can take to get facilities installed, for somebody with an urgency incontinence, could a commode be used in a private space? Given that the urgency might resolve as it does in young children or toddlers, much like you might do with a potty. Just after that slide, after the question was asked, you went on to talk about how it wasn't just about the act of moving your bowels or passing urine, it was the idea of completing the whole task, which includes the flush, etc., which you wouldn't get with the commode. Is that then how you would answer that question?
I think it's like everything, you know, DFGs or any form of modification will take time. So you just need to look at how can you modify the task to make it as normal as to what we normally do as possible. So for example, sometimes ground floor toilets, we've taken the doors off to allow better access for short-term purposes. Somebody made a lovely comment, I noticed in the chat, that you can get potties that look very like toilets. So if you've got young children, you can mimic that in a ground floor space. I think a commode could offer an option. Again, I would want to see it as a very short-term option, not a long-term option. And I think what's really interesting, I was reading last night, there's a recent kind of ombudsman case where the ombudsman has come out and said, given very clear guidelines on time specifications for architects and surveyor involvement after OT specification. And it's worth actually looking at that, because don't quote me on this, but I think they're saying it was something like a surveyor should visit within 3 weeks, an architect should visit within 4 weeks after that. So actually it's saying that DFG should not be going on for long periods of time. Once there's an assessed need, these works need to be happening quickly. And maybe we just need to be pushing for quicker adaptations. Yeah,
okay, great, thanks, Kate. And the only other one that I picked up on is a more straightforward question. There was a slide where you used an image of the toilet with the steps going up to the toilet, and somebody asked where you would source that from.
You know what? I think I got that from Etsy. Am I allowed to promote websites? Etsy on that. But if that person's still on chat, put your email address and I'll go back into the client's notes and find it. Or maybe, Stephen, can we just add that to the questions and we can put it on the YouTube as well or something?
Yeah,
so,
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That question was from,
I'll do a link.
Helena, just in case we're looking for it.
Okay.
And that's all I have, Stephen. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Brilliant. I know we've been answering quite literally hundreds of chats for the last hour, and I know people have busy lives. So was there anything, Robin and Danny, you picked up at all from a Closomat perspective? If not, and quite happy to sort of close the webinar.
We just one about directly relating to children, and that is, what's the youngest age you would recommend a Closomat for, could use a Closomat for? My answer to that, and I'm not a product specialist or an OT, so you know, shoot me down, but I would say it would be probably more to do with the size of the person using the toilet rather than the age of the person, because obviously one doesn't necessarily correlate with the other. So if they can use a conventional loo and it can achieve a reasonably good seating position, then a Closomat will work.
Okay, yeah, I think I mentioned during my talk that I think the youngest person I've worked with has been 5, I think, but certainly I've had a few children that have been under 10, and like I say, we do have to look at seating options and position and making sure that everything works around the toileting, as well in terms of things like the function as well of the spray. Just make sure that that's been reduced down so that they're sensitive. If any you know, children of any age have any sensitivity issues, that can be adjusted. And things like that as well. So we take the whole thing into account. But yeah, I think the youngest person I've dealt with has been about 5.
I think the point is it's adaptable and therefore will, you know, can often work. Just meet with a product specialist and go through it with them.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you know, if it doesn't work, we'll say this isn't going to work, or for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Just writing down some details. Okay, I think sorry, was there one more?
Yes, sorry, Stephen. There was one just regarding a servicing question from, I believe, Martina, just asking how much it is after the DFG or after the warranty. So it's £195 for the year, which if the end user wishes to do, they can also do a direct debit monthly instalment to help with that. And that will allow us to then send an engineer once yearly to give a general service and just check parts and mechanical parts over within the unit. So
I think it's also important, Danny, just to say that also allows unlimited call outs for that engineer as well if there are issues with the toilet.
absolutely, yes, and it allows us, if the client's needs changes as well, then we can look at that during the visits too. So
absolutely, so it covers all eventualities. Brilliant. Thank you, Danny. Okay, I think that's it now, and there's still a number of you still online, so really appreciate that. I'd like to thank everyone, but especially Jeff and Kate for their presentations this morning, but also to Robin, Danny and Adam for dealing with the chat and the Q&A now. We hope to see you all again very soon. We will continue to run these webinars throughout the year, and all I can say is stay safe and see you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
thank you, Stephen. Bye.
Bye-bye.